As Soviet forces pushed deeper into Finland, their commanders still believed the victory was only days away. On paper, the Red Army possessed every possible advantage: more soldiers, more tanks, more artillery, and complete control of the skies. Yet every kilometer they advanced came at an unexpectedly high cost. Entire columns disappeared into endless forests. Supply convoys failed to reach the front, and units that should have been reinforcing one another suddenly found themselves completely isolated. The Finnish army had no intention of fighting the Soviet Union on its own terms. Instead of defending every road and every village, Finnish commanders transformed the country's frozen wilderness into a battlefield unlike anything the Red Army had ever experienced. Dense forests, frozen lakes, and deep snow became natural obstacles that worked against large mechanized formations. Soviet tanks could move only along narrow roads, forcing thousands of vehicles into long, vulnerable lines stretching for kilometers. Once those columns entered the forests, they became easy targets for small Finnish units waiting silently among the trees. The Finns called their strategy the Motti Tactic. Rather than attacking the entire Soviet force at once, they allowed enemy columns to advance deep into isolated areas before striking at several points simultaneously. Roads were blocked with fallen trees, destroyed bridges, and mines. Communication between Soviet units quickly collapsed. One enormous army was suddenly divided into dozens of smaller pockets, each trapped without food, fuel, ammunition, or reinforcements. Finnish troops could then eliminate these isolated groups one after another. Mobility became Finland's greatest advantage. While Soviet infantry struggled through waist-deep snow, Finnish soldiers glided effortlessly across the landscape on skis. Dressed in white camouflage uniforms, they blended almost perfectly into the winter environment. They attacked unexpectedly, fired only a few shots, and disappeared before Soviet commanders even understood where the attack had come from. Every ambush slowed the invasion further and increased confusion throughout the Soviet ranks. The weather proved just as deadly as Finnish bullets. Temperatures frequently dropped below minus 40 degrees Celsius. Engines froze solid during the night. Fuel thickened in storage tanks. Machine guns jammed, and artillery crews struggled simply to keep their weapons operational. Many Soviet soldiers had received clothing designed for ordinary winter conditions, not the brutal Arctic climate they now faced. Frostbite spread rapidly, and entire formations became exhausted before they had even reached the battlefield. Finnish troops, however, had prepared for exactly these conditions. Most had grown up hunting, skiing, and surviving long winters. They knew how to build concealed shelters, move silently through forests, and operate for days with limited supplies. Local knowledge allowed them to choose when and where every engagement would take place. Instead of overwhelming the enemy with numbers, they relied on patience, discipline, and complete familiarity with their homeland. One of the greatest examples of this strategy unfolded near the village of Suomussalmi. Soviet planners believed the area could be captured quickly, opening a route that would split Finland in half. Thousands of Soviet soldiers advanced confidently along frozen roads, supported by tanks and artillery. But once inside the forests, the columns slowed to a crawl. Finnish forces surrounded them from multiple directions, cutting supply routes and attacking isolated positions day and night. Weeks of relentless pressure transformed what had been planned as a rapid Soviet advance into a disaster. Starvation, freezing temperatures, and constant ambushes weakened Soviet morale. Tanks that could not leave the roads became stationary targets. Trucks carrying food and ammunition were destroyed before reaching the front. By the time the fighting ended, entire Soviet divisions had effectively ceased to exist as organized fighting forces. The victory at Suomussalmi shocked military observers across the world. As newspapers reported Finland's unexpected successes, another name quietly began spreading through Soviet ranks. Soldiers whispered about an invisible marksman hidden somewhere within the endless white forests. He rarely spoke, never used a telescopic sight, and almost never missed his target. His ability to disappear into the snow made him seem less like a man and more like a ghost. Soviet troops soon gave him a nickname that would become legendary. They called him the White Death. His real name was Simo Häyhä, a quiet Finnish farmer who had spent years hunting in the forest before the war. Armed with a standard rifle and extraordinary patience, Häyhä used the landscape itself as camouflage. He packed snow in front of his firing position to hide the flash of his rifle, and even kept snow in his mouth, so his breath would not reveal his location in the freezing air. Every detail increased his chances of remaining unseen. Day after day, Soviet patrols entered forests where they believed no enemy was present. Moments later, officers would fall, confusion would spread, and the remaining soldiers would retreat without ever spotting the sniper responsible. By the end of the Winter War, Simo Häyhä was credited with more than 500 confirmed sniper kills, making him one of the deadliest marksmen in military history. His reputation became a powerful symbol of Finnish resistance. The Soviet Union still possessed overwhelming resources, but every week the cost of victory grew higher. Around the world, military experts began asking an uncomfortable question. If one of the largest armies on earth could be stopped by a nation with only a fraction of its manpower, what did that reveal about the Red Army itself? The answer would influence military planning far beyond Finland. Yet, despite these remarkable victories, Finland faced a harsh reality. Ammunition reserves were shrinking. Casualties continued to rise. The Soviet Union could replace lost soldiers and equipment far faster than Finland ever could. Stalin refused to abandon the campaign. Instead, he prepared an even larger offensive that would test Finland's endurance like never before. The most decisive battles of the Winter War were still ahead.